Osceola, and welcome to another edition of Real Talk. We have something real good for you real talkers, so listen up.
Yes, today we'll be talking amongst ourselves. I'll be interviewing Tim a little bit, getting his perspective, and he'll be asking me whatever comes to his mind. But today it's all about identity, mindset, and spirituality, how it all goes together and how you have to know who you are. Tim, why is it so important for you to know who you are, and how does it help you navigate better in this world?
Well, it helps me, it empowers me. It also allows me to look at things differently, look at things more critically. See, before I actually knew who I wasn't feeling the narrative that they were giving me.
Which was
the out of Africa theory. You know, I hadn't heard any stories like that in my family that was passed down. I didn't have any qualities like the Africans, except we all bleed red blood and breathe the same air. And once I found out who I was, what nation I came from the Shawnee Nation, not only did it make me stronger, but it allowed me to understand and to investigate more just who I was and why was it not told? Why wasn't it known to people?
Okay. Well, it's not known because of the miseducation.
Sure.
How did you feel once you realized that you were miseducated from birth in the schools? And what parts was miseducation? Was the whole story, the out-of-slave theory, the out-of-Africa theory, the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, to be quite frank, all of it was.
How did that make you feel when you found
Well,
out?
I felt like I had been lied to, like I had been betrayed somehow. But I knew the purpose of the colonizers. But I didn't understand why more of us didn't know who we were, you know. And through my investigation, I found out exactly who I was. It gave me an opportunity to feel stronger. It allowed me to become more of a sovereign being, understanding just who I was and why I felt so much more a part of this land than some other land.
Let me ask you this. Once you found out who you were and you realized, okay, I've been lied to, how did you put the pieces together? How did you, where did you start? Once you said, okay, the transatlantic slave trade is a lie, how did you figure that out?
Well, very first, I talked to my...
What parts of it is a lie? What parts of the transatlantic slave trade story?
The whole story itself was conceived to dispower us, to give the colonizers time
Who
to
are the colonizers?
Well, the English and the French who came over and colonized, also the Spanish and the Italian. They too came over here.
Over where?
Came to Turtle Island.
Okay.
Okay.
Where did the Spanish end up how did they explore the waters? How did it happen? What happened?
First they sent out explorers, okay, so-called, to find new lands, to seek new lands. These explorers, if you were coming from, for instance, now remember, this is the time when they only had sailboats, boats that could only work with the current and with the air.
Okay.
If you were sailing a sailboat from France or from England, the currents would quite naturally take you toward North America. Okay, that's up in New York, that's Canada, places like that. Also, explorers came from Spain, and they too left from their homelands, but because the current was different where they lived, you ended up in the southern part of the United States, and you ended up in South America and the Caribbean islands.
Okay, so that's where the French and the Spanish ended up because of those currents.
Right, but see, a little side note, the French came up with the British, okay? And they decided that in order for them to colonize, they were going to use the rivers that existed here, like the Mississippi River. And from there, they went down And that's why they ended up in places like Louisiana and
But
such.
they didn't naturally end up in Virginia. That was a lie.
No, that whole Virginia story. In fact, there's a Virginia company of England that Virginia is even named after. So no, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock, as Malcolm X said, landed on us.
Okay. The transatlantic slave trade was a lie. They didn't have nobody on the boats, the sailboats.
The sailboats weren't equipped. They weren't equipped to hold nothing but cargo and the few sailors that they had on the ship. Okay? It was impossible. It was impossible. You'd have to have enough food because you never knew, because of the weather and the wind, how long you'd be at sea. They couldn't risk that. So many boats, so many sailboats were lost at sea. So many sailors lost their lives. Many ships, that's why you always hear about a shipwreck. And they found the shipwreck and they're going down to get the gold and to find out what's there. That's because many ships during that time, sailboats, could not cross.
The Bermuda?
Not only the Bermuda Triangle, but the changes in weather. They didn't know how to tell the weather as well, predict the weather as well as we can now. They didn't have charts and they didn't have graphs. All they knew was the sun, the moon, and the current and the stars.
Well,
that's how they navigated.
Okay, they didn't have anybody with them. That's deep.
Mm-hmm.
That's deep.
Because remember, they were coming for exploration.
Mm-hmm.
They were coming to look for something new so that they could make money and take it back to their own countries. That was the first purpose. This was the new land to them.
How did all the Europeans end up here? When did all the immigrants that I see today, how did they get here?
Well, most of the immigrants that we see today, first, second, third generation Italians, Irish, you name it, came during the 1800s when the steamboat was built. Now, when the steamboat came over, as you know, a lot of historians note the time in which all the immigrants were coming in through New York Harbor. And the first thing they saw was what? The Statue of Liberty. But that story is a true story in the sense that at that time, Europe was going through an economic crisis. So many of us dissidents and so many of us prisoners and those who just couldn't make it over in Europe at that time decided to come to America.
They got
Turtle
transported?
Island. Some of them were transported. A lot of them were given that choice. Because remember, America, the United States, has always asked other people to come in. See, because it wasn't enough for them because we were here first. You know, this was our land, and we had millions and millions of people here. It was completely impossible for those first explorers, even if they had children, to take over. So most of the foreigners that are over here now, you know, from Irish and from French, those people are the ones that came over on steamboats. Now today, of course, we know all it takes is a war anywhere, and then there are immigrants that are flooding this country. And we know that today, that just like back then, the government has always funded immigrants coming in. And I'm not talking immigrant with an E. I'm talking immigrant with an I.
Of course.
You know, you have to you have to understand that.
And understand.
And understand that. Okay?
Can I ask you about the way you dress?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you pick up this style? Where did this occur? Because a lot of people would say this is just quintessential Western cowboy.
Well, see, let me just correct that. Cowboy was a derogatory term that was given to us because we originally dressed this way. As you look in our communities today, we've always been stylish people. See, we changed along with the world changing at the same time. At one time, every tribe on the planet wore sheepskin or wore some sort of leather or some sort of garb. But through time, we learned and we dressed a certain way. This is a Western look. This is what our people have always done. In fact, it's the colonizers that have taken this and romanced it for themselves. Okay? This is a sign of strength. This is a sign of unity. This is a sign of our people. They've taken that just like they've taken great names of tribes and put them on military weapons. The Apache helicopter, this and that. The Tomahawk missile. These are all things they've always taken from us to empower themselves, but also to control our minds. Once I found out who I was, I had to find out more. I had to find out more about our people. I had to find out what we went through, where we were, what happened. And in my research, and this research we've been doing for years.
What did you find out? What
I
happened?
found out that everything.
Let me ask you directly.
Okay.
We were already here, you
right.
say.
We were always here.
We were already here. I noticed we've been renamed a lot. When did this narrative of African American come?
This narrative of African American came from black students in the 50s who were taught African American history by Jewish teachers. Now think about this. This is someone who doesn't even look like you telling you who you're supposed to be. Now remember, it's his story. What in this day of awakening, we're trying to raise awareness to our story, which is a great story. Remember that Indian War went on for 320 years, a physical war. They could never get rid of us, but they, from time to time, with law to law, they have misnamed us. First it was Negro, then it was Black, then it was African American. Before that, even during the time of it being Negro, it was colored, it was mulatto, because we are the copper-colored people. They renamed us, and they only renamed us with every new generation. The miseducation has been going on since the beginning, since the missionaries came over here. Remember, when the missionaries came over here, they came over here with their religion. It took several generations before that particular religion would lock on.
What would you say about all the institutions that's supposed to be a liberal education for our people, like the HBCUs?
Well, if anyone will care to do their research, they'll find out that those HBCUs were HBCUs.
HBCUs,
whatever.
Historically black colleges.
They were started by white folks who put colored folks into place. And this was to teach them their, the white folks' ways. See, it's always been, and it's even more today, that illusion of inclusion. The reason why we were so successful was because we knew who we were. We also knew that it was important for us to build and to create just generational wealth with each other, whether it was in land, whether it was in banking, whether it was in this or that. We've invented everything. How, if we've invented everything since the beginning, of recorded history, how could a people be enslaved yet be so creative that they affect everything in this society? Everything in this society now reflects us. They acquiesce everything, and that's a kind word for stealing, but they acquiesce everything.
Not only that, but we acquiesce by not saying anything. We bite our tongues.
We bite our tongues
a lot,
exactly.
And we accept a lot of these narratives. What does slavery mean? Were we slaves? If we were here all along, and we didn't come off a boat, what were those chains and shackles and those pictures sometimes, or even just pictures of our people working the land? What are those pictures?
Remember, we owned most of the land. slavery around the planet was also a work contract. It was also prisoners of war were put into chains. You know, they've had some sort of punishment or chains since the beginning of time. Okay, but slaves did not always mean being chained up.
Did it always mean colored people being
No,
slaves?
no. See, that's how they.
Black folks was always slaves?
No, white folks were slaves. Remember, most of the white folks that came over here didn't know how to do anything. There are certain articles that you can find, that you can look up, that show you that white people were considered one of the most laziest people coming over here. See, we already were here. We already had our lands. I mean, if you think about it, how could Frederick Douglass have enough money to start so many Friedman Banks, and he simply had supposedly just come out of slavery?
So what did the Friedman Banks mean? Who were the freedmen?
The freedmen.
If there were white and black folks who were incarcerated, if there were white and black folks who was working the land, who were the Friedman Banks for?
The Friedman Banks basically were for those businessmen. Okay? It was a way for us to keep our economy going. See, we never depended on anyone else. We weren't depending on the government because we weren't even citizens yet. We didn't become citizens until sometime in the late 60s. We weren't citizens. Remember, in that Constitution, that first Bill of Rights had something in it against Indians.
Yes.
Okay? And since they knew that we were the copper-colored people, we were the original aborigines of this land, they systematically, over time, through education, through religion, through just saying it over and over again, disenfranchised us. That's why we had that period of time in which Jim Crow was going on. Jim Crow just allowed them to not only terrorize us, but to steal the land. Now, remember, guys, that fear is nothing but false evidence that appears real. So a lot of us, we're in fear. That's why so many of us fled the South for the North, because of that Jim Crow. We no longer wanted our lands. We no longer wanted any businesses. If you remember, in the 20s, Tulsa, Oklahoma, there were many places like Tulsa that we had set up. Because remember, it was a time in which we were separate. You know, segregation was still going on. Things weren't desegregated until the 50s. So what were we doing then? How were we learning? We were teaching ourselves. We were building our own cities, our own towns. We had our own banks. See, there's nothing wrong with being separate if it benefits who you are. Just like identity, if you know who you are, not only does it empower you, but you become a part of the land. The ancestors speak to you. You understand why certain things have gone on. You know, we've always been a very strong people. That's why we've outlasted, and that's why we'll continue to last. But we've been miseducated. You know, this is the time of the awakening. It's time to wake up to the reality. We have more information, or can obtain more information now than we've ever have been. We can put those questions to mind, and now we can come up with answers.
I heard it'll only take 13%. Do you believe that?
I believe that it will take no more, maybe 13% or less. It depends upon who, like myself and like you, in that 13%. But the time is now to stand up for who you are. Using that label African American is not only disrespectful to the Africans, but it's disrespectful to our long legacy, our ancestors. If any one of our viewers speak with any of their great grandparents, they'll find out, or from their mother, or their great.
Anybody born before a certain time.
That's right. They will hear They won't hear we were slaves. Okay? That is a misnomer. Slavery did not exist in the sense of everyone was in chains. Only prisoners of war were in chains. It was a work contract. You were either a servant or an indentured servant.
Working the land.
Working the land. People think that
indentured, I looked up, means a contract.
Exactly.
That's all that means.
People think that the Civil War was a war over slavery or over black over white, but it wasn't that. It was about work contracts. It was about union. It was about the government coming in being able to tax people more, just like everyone who works a job now is taxed.
Mm-hmm. Double tax.
Yeah, double taxed. In fact, yeah. I mean, but see, I wanted to know who I was. I was not happy with someone else telling me his story, and I'm supposed to say, hey, I'm a part of that. I've always felt deeply enrooted. Like I said, when people would say, we've got to go back to the motherland, I've always said, the motherland is where your mother, where your great-grandmother and her mother, where they were born, okay? And whenever you want to look for some family, just take yourself down south and say cousin, say auntie, and somebody's going to come out of the woodwork. But can you really go to Africa and say cousin? Can you say uncle? And is somebody going to come out and claim you? No, it's not going to happen. If you understand why they educated us the way they did and for what purposes, then you understand that it was a miseducation. But that doesn't mean you can't re-educate yourself.
And
unlearn a lot of things. But, in discovering who you are, you're willing to do that. You're willing to go full tilt. You're willing to find out who you really, really are. And once you do, you become stronger. You realize that you have to become more of a sovereign being, that it's important that we continue this history because they're trying to erase us now. You have to pass this down to the children. It's not empowering to call yourself something that you're not. There's something to the name, just like your name. You don't want to be called anyone else but the name that you were given. Well, same way with identity and knowing exactly who you are. We have a great legacy. They have modeled so much of this society off of us. Every time you look around, they're trying to do us. Basically, we have undergirded this country with our money. That's why you see so many of us in commercials. We are the money. We are the country. They lead us to believe, and if you do your research, you'll find out that we're not 13% of the total population of the United States. They are 13%. If you check figures and you check certain facts, you will be able to see that they have a lower birth rate than we do.
Not only that, but they are classifying a lot of people who aren't white as white, I heard.
Well, they've done that for quite a long time.
Yeah, they classify people from the Middle East, North Africa, parts of India, and a lot of those people are you and I's complexion, and they get classified as white.
But we already know that skin folk ain't necessarily your kinfolk. We're talking to kinfolk. Everyone that's listening to me now here, they're kinfolk. And it doesn't make a difference that you don't know what tribe, what nation you come from exactly. But you can rest assured that you're part of the indigenous people here. You are the Niji of this land. And that's proud, that's beautiful. We're beautiful people. We're strong people. We were people who were in tune and vibed out with the planet. We've gotten away by being something that you're not. You completely disassociate yourself from what you really are.
Do you think that was the grand plan, the mission?
Of course, it
to
was the grand.
disassociate
Yes,
us from our land?
and not only that, disenfranchise us totally to break up our families, so that no longer could we give this generational wealth through the mouth and even pass down money. See, the most important thing in this new age is to identify with who you are. And if you identify who you are, you realize the importance of building generational wealth now so that your children's children life can be different. It also empowers you and allows you to be able to navigate through the system of things.
Last question.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you know how beautiful you look and how much I love you? Boy, I love my Cherokee woman.
I love you too, my chief.
But
My last question to you is, what would you like to say to the people that you think would change their lives today? That they can pass down, that they can pivot off of? Anything. What would you like to say to the people to spark?
that we're a very beautiful people. You know, we're very strong people. And it's up to each one of us to keep this legacy alive. We have proof. We can see how they disenfranchised us. We can see how they miseducated us for their benefit. We can see how they've given us this illusion of inclusion. But remember, they named this United States. We didn't. You know, as far as I'm concerned, this is the undivided states.
The divided.
The divided states,
Yes,
right? Exactly.
yes.
You know, this is Turtle Island. This is Turtle Island, and it feels better. I can navigate through life stronger and better, and I don't take anything. I know what my people did. My people didn't take any shit.
All right, then you shouldn't take any shit either. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you think, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Until next time.